So when our creative pursuits come with flow and come with ease, we freeze up and we think, if it was easy, then I didn't earn it. And if I didn't earn it, I don't deserve it. And if I don't deserve it, it'll be taken away. So then it's better to, even if it's subconsciously, make things harder than they need to be, because that is proving to yourself that you are deserving of the success. You are deserving of everything that comes along with going after your dreams and going after your goals. Hey, creative, and welcome back to another episode of Year Without Fear. I'm your host, Bethany Morris, and I am a certified somatic and trauma-informed creative coach who believes that your greatest life lies on the other side of facing your fears. And today we're going to be talking about the 2026 rebrand and the fear of changing with ease. Let's get right into it. So first, I wanted to get into what the 2026 rebrand is, in case you don't know. So it is basically what I'm doing this year, trying to change my life in a year. But what's different about the 2026 rebrand, and I think the language around it, is that we're not only trying to change our lives, but we're trying to step inside a new identity. And I think the 2026 rebrand becomes so stressful because we're trying to change our entire identity without doing the base work to make our nervous system feel comfortable, or at least not super stressed out. But I want to offer something to you. What if the 2026 rebrand didn't have to be hard? What if you could do it with ease and flow and surrender? And I think we fear ease because we've been told all our lives that if it's not a struggle, then you didn't do it right. We've been told we've been told all of our lives things like no pain, no gain. Good things come to those who hustle. If it was easy, everyone would do it. So when something comes with ease, when something flows, we don't trust it because we haven't been working hard for it, as society says we have to work for all of our goals and aspirations. So I think the belief system around the fear of ease kind of centers around, if you're struggling, then you know you deserve something because it was hard to get there. And when something is easeful, it feels like you're getting away with something. Or if something is particularly painful while you're trying to reach that goal, is validation that you are worthy of success. And you think that ease and flow is suspicious because it's too good to be true. That's what we've been told all of our lives, right? So for me personally, a lot of this shows up in content creation. I feel like content creation comes really naturally for me and for a lot of people. But because of that, it causes me to not only get in a spiral of perfectionism, it also causes me to want to overcomplicate things. So I say things like, oh, I need a better thumbnail, or I need the podcast to be longer because nobody's going to listen to it if it's super short, or they won't take me seriously if it's super short. And I have to put a bunch of research into it because I'm not an expert in this field and nobody's going to take me seriously. So I think that ease and easefulness feels especially difficult for creatives. As creatives, we have a big fear of success because our brains are trained to stay within the pack. And when we don't do that, when we break the mold, when we break the social norms, we feel really intense fear around that. All of a sudden, we start fearing, hey, am I going to be ostracized by my friends and family? Or if I succeed, that means that I'm going to have to be seen. So I think fear of success is especially damaging for creatives. I think the second fear that creatives face as it regards to the fear of ease or easefulness is that we fear that we don't deserve it if it comes easily to us. As creatives, we're constantly inundated with phrases like struggle for your art, or writing is bleeding on the page. So when our creative pursuits come with flow and come with ease, we freeze up and we think, if it was easy, then I didn't earn it. And if I didn't earn it, I don't deserve it. And if I don't deserve it, it'll be taken away. So then it's better to, even if it's subconsciously, make things harder than they need to be, because that is proving to yourself that you are deserving of the success. You are deserving of everything that comes along with going after your dreams and going after your goals. And then I think the third fear that plagues creatives about the fear of easefulness is that we are afraid of exposure. And what I mean by that is if we are facing our fears to succeed in being seen, when we finally are able to do it, you have to then question why you weren't doing that before and what was holding you back. And a lot of things that are holding us back are things that you find don't really matter. You find that you were basing your decisions off the judgment of other people, of society, of your parents, of whoever. And I think that when we do that, we sort of hamstring ourselves for could be weeks, months, and even years, decades, for a really long time. And I think that we as creatives need to break out of that cycle and let things be easeful. And then I think that the fear of ease or easefulness shows up as self sabotaging patterns a lot of the times, especially as creatives. We tend to overcomplicate everything. I'm guilty of this as well. So whenever I'm writing and it's flowing in the past, especially, I have had this feeling that, oh, it's flowing so easily. And then all of a sudden, even if it's not conscious, I will scrap the entire thing and need to rewrite the entire thing and entire um rewrite the entire outline, even though the writing was going so well before. We trick ourselves into thinking that if it's not complicated, if it is easeful, no, we're not working hard enough. And then I think the second thing that creatives tend to do is create artificial struggle for themselves. And again, this is usually subconsciously, right? So this can look like setting unrealistic time frames for yourself to finish your projects. This can look like working at weird hours at 2 a.m. because if you're not suffering for your art, then the art's not worth consuming. And again, I think this is something we need to stop. I think that even if it was easeful, that your art is worth sharing with the world, not because you struggled for it, but because you are meant to be seen. And it's okay to want to be seen, and it's okay to want to touch people with your work. It's okay. The next one is a big one for me as well, and that is you self-sabotage by questioning the quality of your work. So I think the main thought is if this came so easily to me, it must not be any good. I'm really guilty of this. When I'm writing and it's flowing, and I will be in the moment and be like, "Hey, I think this is coming out really well." I'll all of a sudden, like, look back and try to make, like, a little bit of edits, and then I'll get really nitpicky with myself and say, "Oh god, that sentence is awful," or, "Why did you use that word 3 times in a row?" I think that we tend to pick ourselves apart feel easily when things feel easy, because if something was easy, it feels inferior to our belief systems. I think the fourth way the self sabotaging patterns show up is in procrastination, which I think a lot of us, if not all of us, are guilty of. I think that we procrastinate because if it's coming so easily to me, clearly I need to research more. Clearly I need to work harder in some other way. Clearly, this means that I'm not ready to write the next great American novel. This means that the timing is just not right for the project that you're working on. And I think when you procrastinate to the point where you're stopping yourself before you become successful, it's because you have to admit to yourself that you are not comfortable with being seen, and that's why you procrastinate. And there's going to be a lot of guilt and shame associated with that. And again, I think we talked about in previous episodes that you kind of get into a guilt or shame spiral, and it makes it really hard to break out of those patterns once you start wanting to change your life in earnest. And then I think the fifth thing we do as creatives is wear our burnout as a badge. So we work really, really hard. We hyper focus. We work at all hours of the day, all hours of the night, if you're a night owl like me. And we work ourselves into the ground because we feel that if we're not working ourselves into the ground, if we're not hustling, if we're not grinding 24/7, then we're not doing it right. But I'd like to offer you a question, which is who came up with the rules that you're not doing it right if you aren't hustling, grinding, and overworking yourself to the point of burnout and exhaustion? Where did that come from? I also think that there are a lot of cost associated with fearing the feeling of ease. Number one is a lot of time sucking. If you're fearing the ease, you're going to spend 10 hours on something that you could usually finish in a couple hours because you're sort of battling within yourself again that if this was easy, then it must not be good, right? If it was easy, then it's not worth sharing to the world. And I think that it wastes a lot of our time, right? It wastes a lot of our time editing and re-editing and doing whatever and making 10 thumbnails because we're so caught up in this spiral of wanting things to feel the perfect level of difficulty, I suppose, or maybe it's just not the perfect level, but just a level of difficulty that makes you uncomfortable. I also think the cost of fearing ease comes with your energy. I think that a lot of us will work ourselves to the point of exhaustion. I mean, that's my story. If you don't know, I burned myself out this year, 2025. And I went through a really, really, really bad depressive episode. And it took a long time for me to get out of it. And it is because I worked myself into the ground. It is because I didn't take breaks when I needed it. It is because I didn't ask for help when I needed it. So when you're afraid of ease, I think it also can cost you your energy levels, your health sometimes, and get really, really severe. I think that the other thing that the fear of ease can cost you is your own joy. You're so afraid that your stuff isn't perfect. You're so afraid that it's not good enough. You're so afraid that people are going to criticize you, that you don't take moments to celebrate and to be joyful, that you push past your fear, that you created something. This is something that I'm trying to change about myself this time around. So every time I get to 10,000 words in the novel, 10, 20, 30, etc., I'm going to reward myself in some way. So this time when I reached 10,000, I went and got my nails done. Next time when I reach 20,000, I'm going to get a nice fancy cocktail. Reward yourself. Find ways to create joy. Because if you're not creating joy in your process, you're going to start dreading having to do it. And I think the fourth thing that being afraid of ease costs us is our relationships. And I think that it costs us our relationships because we say that we can do it ourselves. We say that we don't need help. We say that we don't need to ask questions. We say that, we are an island and we're going to pull a Walden and be super secluded as we work on our work nonstop. And we're not going to ask anybody for help. We're not going to ask anybody for advice. We're not going to ask anybody for anything. We're going to remain isolated. And I think that your best work can come from being in a space where you're bouncing ideas off of other creative people that may or may not necessarily be in your industry. I think that that really helps creative individuals think outside the box. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and rate on Apple or Spotify podcasts if you're enjoying this episode so far. The next thing I wanted to get into is how to actually rebrand your life with ease, right? Because we've been talking about the different things that it'll cost you. We've been talking about the fear of ease in general, but now it's time to learn how we can live our lives in a more easeful way. So I think that when we think of rebranding our life, first of all, we tend to think of our goals. So one of my goals is to move to a new city this year, but I have not stepped into the new identity of being the woman who is consistently saving up for that move, right? I am a very sporadic sort of saver. And I think that is a self-sabotaging pattern of mine is not learning about finances, which I'm also trying to change this year so that I can be better prepared just as an adult and just as someone who wants to really make their dreams come true this year. So when you're changing your identity to someone who lets ease and flow into their life, you want to remember that ease equals alignment. I think that ease is equivalent with alignment to the work that you're doing. When you are in ease, when you're creating, then you're in your God state. You are basically channeling and getting what is living in your heart out on the page, out on the canvas, out on whatever medium you participate with. And I want you to remember that even if you didn't struggle, that your work is valid, even if you didn't completely lose yourself in the process, because it's not, we live in a really fast paced society and we're doing all these things every single day and doing all these things at once. And we don't have time to, or the energy to kind of sit with ourselves and our thoughts at the end of the day. We tend to block out all senses of ease with things that'll numb us, whether that is alcohol, whether that is food, whether that is scrolling through TikTok. We are predisposed to think that when something is easeful, it must not be good, right? But as you start to train yourself to think that if something is easeful, that you are in alignment and that it is worth being seen, whatever you're working on, when you start to get into the trap of, well, it must not be good enough. Am I making this harder to prove something to myself and to others? I think a lot of times we also feel guilty when we have success because we are outpacing our peers. But I want you to remember that reaching your full potential doesn't make other people feel inferior to you. I think it's the opposite. I think it shows them that they too can have a life with easeful creativeness, which is something that we should aspire to as creatives. This easefulness of working on our art and this easefulness of creating just for the sake of creating and not for the sake of being recognized, right? I think it's just for the sake of being comfortable in our bodies and saying that my ease shows others what is possible, not my ease showing that my work isn't valuable or I'm not a serious person because it came easy to me. And when you are shifting your identity, I think that you'll start to realize that, hey, I could have done this years ago, or I could have done this decades ago, whatever it is. I think that it's important to be able to forgive yourself. I think that everything happens in divine timing. And even if you can't connect the dots right away as to why what happened or what's happening in the presence is going to matter in your future, I think it's important to just trust. And again, let things be easeful. Don't let stepping into your new identity be harder than it has to be. Find ways to do it with ease and flow, and trust your intuition and listen to those intuitive hits that make it seem, that tell you that you're on the right path, that tell you you're doing something worthwhile, that tell you that you are, in fact, an artist and that your work is valuable and that you should share your work and that you should feel seen. I think that another thing a lot of us struggle with is being able to hold the capacity to receive. And what I mean by that is that once we start receiving, even if it's just like a compliment, a lot of our tendencies will be to say something like, "Oh no, it's nothing." For me, especially when I receive affection or when I receive love, especially from romantic partners, my immediate reaction is, "Why do you like me? Why do you want me?" It's this kind of myth. It's this being avoidant with the energy of receiving, and to shift into your new identity and to do it with ease means that you're going to have to allow yourself to be able to receive, not just in the artistic way to channel your artistic pursuits into a medium, but also in a way that doesn't burn you out. Okay, now we're going to get into the somatic practices that you can do today to help you transition into your life into your new identity with ease. So the first practice I want you to do is to just simply notice where you're resisting the feeling of ease and receiving. So I want you to think about your 2026 rebrand goal, and I want you to say it out loud. So one of mine would be, I want to finish a novel this year. And then I want you to close your eyes and just notice if you feel that anywhere in your body. For me, I feel my throat tightening up. For me, I feel a little bit of anxiety. And in my body, that feels like my chest sort of contracting. And if you're getting these feelings, I want you to ask the question, what am I afraid will happen if I let this be easy? The second practice is around receiving. So I just want you to practice receiving. One time a day, I want you to practice receiving. It could be a compliment, could be ease in your work, could be a congratulations on a job well done, employee of the month kind of thing, And if you are feeling any discomfort, I want you to do the first practice and just notice again where you're feeling that in your body, because that's your capacity for receiving, right? That is the edge. And then I want you to stay with it anyway. I want you to feel what it feels like to sit with the energy of receiving, to soften and to let yourself receive love and receive all of the good things because you deserve it, not because you accomplished anything or because you're a celebrity or whatever it is. You deserve it because you're a human being. And as humans, I think we all deserve to live as easeful a life as possible, to live lives where we are comfortable being, where we are comfortable receiving love and receiving affection and receiving validation. And then the third somatic exercise is to visualize. So I want you to close your eyes and visualize, what does your 2026 rebrand look like if you were to do it with ease, not struggle, not suffering. I want you to imagine what it would look like if things were flowing and there wasn't any resistance and there wasn't any force into what you were doing to complete those goals. If it was just effortless. And then I want you to notice, does your body even feel comfortable visualizing this? And if it does, where do you feel uncomfortable in your body? Is your throat tightening? Do you feel some sort of pain in your chest? Whatever it is, I want you to breathe into that space and acknowledge it and tell yourself that it's going to be okay. Tell yourself that it's okay to feel fear. And then I want you to tell yourself it's okay to feel ease. It's okay to feel like things are flowing well, because we don't want to get into the habit where we are constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? We want to get into a habit of this feeling of ease being our new identity in 2026. I want you to ask yourself and journal about, what does my 2026 rebrand look like if I don't force but allow ease? How can I practice creating ease in my day-to-day life? How can I recognize the fear of ease showing up in my life? How can I gently remind myself that things are allowed to be easy? Okay, now we're going to do a quick little life update. As I said in the previous episode, I'm very close to being finished with Act 1. And I find that the prospect of going into Act 2 really scares me because I don't have a clear vision of how all the storylines are going to weave together. But I'm trying to remember that I did not have a clear vision at all as to how Act 1 was going to go. I just had very basic plot points figured out. And it worked. I really think that Act 1 is a solid first draft. So I think that allowing myself to receive and to flow is kind of a sticking point with me for Act 2. It's like I need to do all this preparation and all this outlining before I can even start writing, where before I, just outlined 3 to 5 scenes at a time and then wrote them and then outlined a few more scenes and then wrote them. So I think I need to allow myself to kind of just, when I do start writing again, go in with no expectations, go in with the ability to be open, and go with the energy of wanting to receive. And that brings us to the end of the episode. So today we talked about the 2026 rebrand and the fear of allowing things to be easy. We talked about how fear of ease shows up. We talked about rebranding your life with ease. Then we went into some somatic practices and, of course, the homework for the week. So share your 2026 rebrand goals in the comments if you're so inclined. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and rate if you're listening on Spotify or Apple. I'll see you next week.